I'll tell you what, I have been slaving over a hot computer to bring you a top 10 of the most popular and beloved Halloween time family movies of all time. What's up everybody, your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and I know there are a lot of qualifiers in that opening sentence. First off, I want to let you know all 10 of these movies are Halloween time movies, meaning that they're not necessarily about the holiday of Halloween, but they are movies that you would generally watch in October. Also, when I say that they are family Halloween movies, what I mean by that is that these are movies that the entire family can enjoy. None of them are going to be more than PG, so no scary horror movies to traumatize your little ones. But at the same time, I really feel that all of these movies are something that everyone can enjoy regardless of your age. So if that kind of thing sounds cool to you, maybe drop a like on the video, and if you want to see more ranking videos just like this one, well, you gotta subscribe. And without further ado, let's get started with number 10. Coming in at number 10 is the 2002 live action version of Scooby-Doo. Now, a fun fact about this movie is that it was actually directed by James Gunn, who of course we know now as being the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as well as some other really great movies. And as of recording of this video, it was just announced that he is going to be the co-CEO of DC's animation, TV, and movie division. But this is something that he did way back 20 years ago before he really blew up. And you can definitely tell that it has a lot of his flavor throughout it. Although from what I've heard, they definitely cut a lot out of the original script to make it a little more family friendly. In the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie, Mystery Inc., the gang, breaks up. From there, they are each individually invited to an island to discover some mysterious goings-on. I actually remember watching this movie in theaters. I think it was on a summer vacation, and I went to the movies by myself. And for some reason, as a kid, I wanted to watch Undercover Brother, which was in theaters at the same time. I remember a few minutes into that movie, realizing it was definitely not for a kid like me, and then leaving and going to see Scooby-Doo instead. And you know what? I don't regret it one bit. Scooby-Doo is an absolute gem of the early 2000s. You have a great cast, especially at 2002. There's Freddie Prinze Jr. playing Fred, oddly enough. Sarah Michelle Gellar, who would actually turn out to be his wife for the past 20 or so years, played Daphne. You have Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, who I believe to this day still does the voice of Shaggy in a lot of the cartoons. There's Linda Cardellini as Velma, who as a young kid, I'll tell you what, I loved Velma. For maybe some reasons I didn't quite understand at the time. Then you have Rowan Atkinson, yes that's right, Mr. Bean himself, playing a somewhat sketchy character on the island. Oh, and let's not forget a couple of very special and kinda weird cameos, one from Pamela Anderson and another from the band Sugar Ray. It doesn't get much more early 2000s than that. Alright, coming up next at number 9 is a movie that jumps forward a few years from the 2002 Scooby-Doo movie, and that is the 2006 Monster House. In Monster House, 3 teens discover that their neighbor's house, that is owned by a creepy old man that doesn't want you on his yard, is actually a living, breathing monster. Monster House actually has a really crazy crew behind it. It is produced by both Robert Zemeckis' company as well as Steven Spielberg's Amblin. And it was actually the first computer animated film to be produced by Sony, who has obviously gone on to do way more now. Monster House is definitely a movie I would say is aimed more at kids. However, it does have some great moments in there that are genuinely funny and some really great cameos. You've got Steve Buscemi, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Nick Cannon, Kevin James. They play a pair of cops that are hilarious. You also have John Heder from Napoleon Dynamite and Jason Lee, who I know from a lot of the Kevin Smith movies like Chasing Amy. All in all, Monster House is a very creative and overall fun movie that the entire family can enjoy together. Coming up next at number 8 is a movie that is an absolute staple of my childhood, especially around the Halloween season, and it just recently had another release come out. But that movie is the original 1993 Hocus Pocus. Now, I actually just recently did a review of the sequel that just came out a little bit ago, so if you want to check that out, I'll throw it at the end of the video. In Hocus Pocus, Max, who is a teenage boy, and his little sister move to Salem, Massachusetts. There, they accidentally awaken a trio of very evil witches who want nothing more than to devour their souls. Now, as far as the movies that we've talked about so far, this is definitely the one that is the spookiest, I would say, but at the same time, I don't think it's anything that little ones couldn't really enjoy. Both the original Hocus Pocus in 1993 and, oddly enough, the sequel that just recently came out have the exact same cast playing the three witches, which I think is pretty awesome that they were all three willing to come back for this movie. But that is Kathy Najimy, Sarah Jessica Parker, and of course, the legendary Bette Midler. Now, Hocus Pocus didn't receive the best reviews when it first came out. It is definitely cheesy, and it is definitely a Disney movie aimed at kids, but I think it's something that a lot of us who grew up around that time have come to love and enjoy, and I think it's something that if you have kids now, would be great to introduce them to, so that way you guys can share that together. And if you end up liking it, you've got a sequel. Okay, next up, coming in at number 7 is a 1995 movie starring Bill Pullman and Christina Ricci called Casper. Now, I'm sure we're all already super familiar with the concept of Casper, but in this movie, Bill Pullman plays a kind of therapist for the dead, and he is hired to go into this house, which is really a mansion, to kind of exorcise the ghosts that are in there, or really just kind of help them pass on to the afterlife. He of course brings along his daughter Christina Ricci, and there she meets a trio of unfriendly ghosts, but one particularly friendly ghost named Casper. Now, like a lot of these movies, Casper did come out with mixed reviews. It is most definitely a kids movie, but it also has some pretty dark themes. I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid that when your main character is a dead child. But despite that, I feel like it still maintains a kind of lightheartedness to it. And although it doesn't shy away from letting you know about some of the kind of unsavory things that happen throughout the movie and happened before it with our main character, it still manages to stay light and fun and pretty entertaining. Casper also, if you think about it and remember back to 1995, it has some crazy animation. A large portion of the movie have a series of ghosts floating around, and of course it's CG animated, but back in 95, there was not a lot of great CG animation going on, and I think that what they managed to do here looks fantastic, even to this day. Now, the original Casper movie in 1995 was super successful, and so because of that, they did come out with a couple of sequels that went straight to video. Those I do not recommend at all. Those were not particularly good, but this movie I definitely recommend you check out. Also, I should probably clarify how I'm ranking these movies. This is not based on my own personal opinion or anything like that. Instead, what I did is I made a list of all of the family-friendly, PG-rated Halloween time movies that I could think of, and then I went and tracked which ones are the most popular, so which ones have the most views, reviews, made the most at box office, that kind of thing, to kind of determine which ones are the most beloved, because I don't know about you, but I tend not to watch movies that I hate. So I think it's safe to say if a lot of people are watching something, it's probably because they like it. So I'm not saying this list is the end all be all, but it's what I came out with. So if you have your own movies that are not on this list, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what I missed. Coming up next is a 2009 stop motion fantasy horror movie directed by the kinda legendary Henry Selick, and that is a movie called Coraline. In Coraline, you have an 11-year-old girl named Coraline who is really not getting along with her parents. She then finds her way to another world where she's introduced to these idealized versions of her parents. But it's then revealed that there is something sinister simmering underneath the surface. Coraline herself is played by Dakota Fanning, who, of course, I'm sure you all know, and also stars Terry Hatcher, who I know from playing Lois Lane in Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman from back in the 90s. Of course, you might also know her from being in Desperate Housewives, I believe, but I've never actually seen that, so it's not really for me. Now, as I mentioned, Coraline is directed by Henry Selick, who also directed another movie that may show up on our list later on. And you may not have known this, it is actually based on a novella written by Neil Gaiman, who is an incredible writer. And actually, I just finished watching the Sandman series that is based on another one of his book series. And man, this guy does not miss. Something I really appreciate about Coraline is that although it is a movie that is aimed at younger kids, it has some really serious undertones to it, and it doesn't shy away from telling a kind of adult story. Or I guess not really an adult story because it is about a kid getting along with their parents, but it's something that you can get a lot out of, both as a child and as an adult. In fact, when I was putting together this list, this movie is one of the movies that came to mind as being something that both kids can enjoy, but also something that the entire family can get around and get something out of, if that makes sense. All right, now we move into our top 5. Coming in at number 5 is the 2012 comedy horror movie Hotel Transylvania. Now, as much as Coraline is a movie that I think has a lot of deep meaning behind it, Hotel Transylvania is a little more lighthearted than that. Although it's not completely without its life lessons baked in. In Hotel Transylvania, you have Dracula, who owns a hotel specifically for monsters and ghouls and things like that. And he's throwing I think it's a 118th birthday party for his daughter, who is becoming more and more interested in kind of exploring the world and seeing what humans are like. But of course, then Dracula gets super overprotective, especially when a young human boy finds his way into the hotel. Now, I'm sure you can kind of guess what happens from there. This isn't really a mystery or anything like that, but it is a fun, lighthearted, enjoyable movie with a family spin. Hotel Transylvania also has a star-studded cast, and actually, there are 2 actors in the cast that were in a movie we talked about earlier, and that is Kevin James and Steve Buscemi. Oddly enough. But I would say the stars of the movie are Adam Sandler playing Dracula, who is actually pretty good in the role. I feel like Adam Sandler can be pretty hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes he absolutely knocks it out of the park, like with a movie like Uncut Gems. But then there are a lot of Adam Sandler movies that are kind of just nothing burgers. But I think he did a really good job in this movie, at least in the first one. I haven't seen any of the sequels. I think there's 3 of them at this point, and from what I understand, those are not nearly as well received. But at least in this first movie, he is pretty good. You also have Andy Samberg, who plays the lead human character, and I believe Selena Gomez playing Dracula's daughter. In addition to that, check this out. You have Fran Drescher from The Nanny, Molly Shannon, David Spade, CeeLo Green is in this movie. It's pretty ridiculous. But all in all, this is just a fun, kind of lighthearted family movie. Something you can kind of just throw on and not really pay too much attention to. But I still think something that everyone will enjoy. And with that, we are getting into the top 4. Coming in at number 4 is the 2005 stop motion movie directed by Tim Burton, called The Corpse Bride. I should say the movie was actually directed by Tim Burton and Mike Johnson, but I think everyone's gonna know it as being a Tim Burton movie. In Corpse Bride, you have a young man who is getting married who is very shy and bumbly, so much so that he wants to practice his wedding vows the night before. And in doing so, he accidentally agrees to marry a dead person? Yeah. I think it's safe to say this is a Tim Burton movie. As if that's not enough to prove that it's a Tim Burton movie, do you want to guess who the 2 lead actors are? That's right, Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter, who are, of course, in every Tim Burton movie. Not that I'm complaining, I think they're fantastic. And also, like most Tim Burton movies, the music in this one is, of course, by Danny Elfman, who is a great composer. Of course, being a Tim Burton movie, I feel like Corpse Bride really falls into place with being something that creates a dark and kind of twisted, but still in a lovable way, world and characters. It's really kind of difficult to describe the way he does that. Because yeah, all of the characters in this movie, as far as the ones that are dead, are kind of grotesque and creepy and unnerving, but at the same time, kind of cute and charming. He also tells a really poignant and sweet story about what it is to fall in love with someone, as well as what it is to let someone go when you know it's the right thing to do. Which, as with a lot of these movies that are a little deeper on the list, may be something that goes over younger kids' heads, but at the same time, there's still so much for them to enjoy in this movie. I will say, if you get a little nitpicky with it, some of the writing is a little but it's a kid's movie, it's all for fun, so I'm really not gonna get too critical about all of that. Also, a little fun trivia fact, this is actually the first stop-motion animated movie that Tim Burton himself directed. You may think about James and the Giant Peach and Nightmare Before Christmas, but both of those movies were not directed by him, just produced. So if you have an upcoming Halloween trivia night, maybe you can use that one. All right, coming in at number 3 is a movie that I have to be careful not to say 3 times in a row, and that is the 1988 movie Beetlejuice. Now, Beetlejuice, as I go back and watch it now, is kind of a pretty dark movie, but it is rated PG, so don't come at me. In fact, there were plenty of movies that I wanted to throw on this list that I felt were less aggressive and adult than Beetlejuice, but they were technically rated PG-13, so I had to leave them out. Shout out to Addams Family. But in Beetlejuice, we follow a couple who has recently become, well, not living. They are then left to haunt their house when a family moves in that is incredibly annoying. And then, of course, as ghosts, they try to drive them out. So I guess the concept of the movie is kind of simple when you think about it, but where it goes from there gets crazy weird. You follow the main characters into the afterlife, which is basically like a waiting room and an office, which is a kind of a commentary on bureaucracy, I guess. And then of course you're introduced to Beetlejuice, who is played by the legendary Michael Keaton, who is completely unhinged and kind of a jerk, but also someone who you just love to see on screen in this movie. Of course, I should also mention the couple that has become recently deceased is played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, who, if you're looking for a great Gina Davis movie, definitely check out The Long Kiss Goodnight. That's a little recommendation for you there. In addition to that, you have a young Winona Ryder who plays the daughter of the family that moves into this house that is now haunted, who is kind of a super goth girl who ends up getting in communication with the spirits. Oh, I should also mention before we move on, I am going to link to all of these movies in the description below, so if you're looking to pick them up on Blu-ray or 4K, if you use those links, it helps out the channel a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. Beetlejuice was directed once again by Tim Burton and has become massively popular over the years, so much so that they have made an animated series about it, a video game, or I think multiple video games. There was a musical about Beetlejuice. It is incredibly popular to this day. And although I was too young to watch it when it first came out, watching it all these years later as an adult, I can absolutely see how this was so incredible, especially at the time that it was released. And I believe just a few months ago, there was talk about them making an actual sequel to this movie, which, fingers crossed, Michael Keaton would come back to play Beetlejuice yet again. I don't know about you, but I would absolutely love to see that. All right, we're almost done. Can you guess what the top two are gonna be? I'll tell you what, I think the first one might be a little controversial, but coming in at number 2 is the 1993, you guessed it, Tim Burton movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, of course, I say Tim Burton movie. Tim Burton produced it. This movie was also directed by Henry Selick. So this is that other movie that I had talked about earlier on. Now, The Nightmare Before Christmas, there's a lot of controversy as to whether this is a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie. I mean, it has Christmas in the title, but the main character is from Halloween Town. So I would say, why not both? In The Nightmare Before Christmas, we follow Jack Skellington, who is the king of Halloween Town, as he discovers a neighboring town called Christmas Town. He then attempts to bring Christmas home with him, and it gets really weird from there. The Nightmare Before Christmas actually not only has music by Danny Elfman, but Danny Elfman plays the singing voice of Jack Skellington. The speaking voice is Chris Sarandon. You also have Catherine O'Hara, who you might know from being the mom in Home Alone, or also, oddly enough, in Beetlejuice. She plays Sally, which is of course where my shirt is kind of derived from. This is the Sally print here. And when you really think about which Halloween time movies are the most popular, how can you not say The Nightmare Before Christmas? This is a movie that's on everyone's list to watch this time of year. And I know so many people, including my girlfriend, who are absolute diehard fans, know the words to every song, can pretty much quote the movie from front to back. This movie does not just have fans, it has fanatics. The world that Tim Burton and Henry Selick create in this is just so enthralling and lovable, and you want to dive into it and really get to know all the characters. It's honestly the epitome of charm. When I think about what Tim Burton is able to do with a lot of his animated movies, where it's creepy yet charming, this is by far the most charming. But if The Nightmare Before Christmas is number 2 on the list, what could possibly be the most popular Halloween time movie of all time? Well, that's where it gets controversial. Coming in at number 1 by a pretty large margin based on all of the numbers that I ran is the 2017 animated feature film, Coco. Now, I already know what you're gonna say because I said the same thing, but Coco isn't about Halloween. It's about the Day of the Dead. That's totally different. Of course, I agree. If I was making a list that is specifically Halloween movies or movies about Halloween, then it would not be on the list. But this is Halloween time, so it is the month of October, it is spooky season, and I could not deny how absolutely incredibly popular and successful this movie was. So if you want to fight me in the comments, you can, it's fine, just be nice. But I will say, before you do attack me, go and watch Coco first, because it's a great movie. Coco revolves around an aspiring musician named Miguel, as he is struggling with his family's multiple generation-long ban on music. He then enters the land of the dead to find his great great-great-grandfather who was a legendary musician in Mexico. Where do I even begin with this movie? For one, it is absolutely stunning in every scene. The art style is gorgeous to look at. The animation is incredible. The story itself is so moving. I challenge you to watch this movie and to not think that the main character is absolutely adorable. Also, I challenge you to watch this movie and listen to the music and not be sitting there tapping your toes or trying to sing along. I should say, in fact, the composer of this movie is Michael Giacchino, who has become one of the most incredibly popular and successful composers of our generation. It's also the first feature film with a 9-figure budget that would feature an entirely Latino primary cast. And it would go on to make over $800 million. I feel like I should put my pinky up to my mouth when I say that. $800 million. It won 2 Oscars at the Academy Awards as well as a bunch of other awards that season. And it's currently sitting at a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you know how fickle those Rotten Tomatoes critics can be. This movie is honestly perfect. It will make you laugh, it will make you cry, it will make you think about who you are and how you are with your family. This is the epitome of a family movie to watch around the Halloween season. And although you may debate me on the specifics as to whether or not it qualifies as a Halloween time movie, I don't think there's any debate that this is one of the greats. But of course, this is all just my opinion. I would love to hear yours. Definitely let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. And if you enjoyed this, drop a like on it. Do me a solid. Otherwise, here's that other video I talked about, the Hocus Pocus 2 movie review. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.